Where have all the good men gone, and where are all the gods? Where's that streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? Isn't there a white knight upon a fiery steed? Late at night I toss and turn, and I dream of what I need. I need a hero. Welcome to the Retirement Answer Man Show. My name is Roger Whitney. I am not your hero, but I am the host of the show, and this is the show dedicated to helping you not just survive retirement, but have the confidence to be the hero in order to rock retirement. Anybody recognize those lyrics? It's an 80s song. I used to love a few of her songs in high school. That is Holding Out for a Hero, Bonnie Raitt. And I challenge you to, in fact, we'll put it in 6 Shot Saturday. We'll put the link to the YouTube music video. I challenge you to play that video loud and not dance around just a little bit. You should have seen me in my studio a second ago. I was rocking it. Anyway, Holding Out for a Hero. Well, the bad news is there's not going to be a hero coming. The good news is you're the hero. You have heroic virtues and abilities. And that's going to be the theme of this month, of how to be your own hero, how to be intentional about rocking retirement, not just today, but later in life, and leaning into embodying all the amazing abilities and virtues that you have. And we're going to do this in a structured way. And today we're going to talk about what is a hero with my friend Michael Balchan from Optimize, the heroic platform, which is something that we actually licensed as free to members in the clubs, the Rock Retirement Club, but you can use it too. We're going to have Michael on for the entire month about how do we go about living a heroic retirement. And probably a good time to do that when we feel like we're looking for heroes, whether it's the markets or inflation or anything else, right? And we're going to have more technical stuff too in our question and answer session, our segment where we answer your questions. And I'm going to ask a favor of you right up front. I don't ask for much. I try not to anyway. Is if you know somebody that could use this show in their life, share an episode with them. One that you think that they could use, because we're trying to build a community so we can have a deeper, richer conversation of how to rock retirement. And with that, let's get on with the show. Today's show is sponsored by LTCI Partners. They do long-term care insurance solutions, and they're an independent agency. So when you're managing this important risk, which is a big risk, they're a good partner for you to find out, one, if you're insurable, and if you are, what might be the most appropriate solution for you. So you can check them out at www.ltcipartners.com/RAM. So today we're going to start a month-long series on living a heroic retirement. And over the next 5-week month, we're going to slowly create a framework that you can use to start thinking of yourself a little bit differently and leaning into the kind of person you want to be every single day. We're going to do that with a friend of mine, Michael Balchan, who is the head coach and chief of staff at Optimize, which there's an Optimize platform that we've talked about on the show before, and the Heroic platform, which is actually an app on Android and Apple to help you live into your best self. And this is something that I've been involved with for a little over a year now. I've been doing the work from the coaching aspect of learning the concepts and applying them in my life. I've been doing the training to be an optimized coach to really go deep on these types of things. And I'm a big believer in it. And I've been using it in my life. And I believe in it so much that we licensed it as a benefit in the Rock Retirement Club. So I have a lot of interest in this personally for my own life, which is how it all started. But I thought so much of it that I'm like, we got to do this as members in the club. And I want to talk to you about it too, because this is something you can do on your own, whether you use the Heroic app you can find in your app store, or whether you're focusing on these concepts with a spreadsheet or whatever else. This is important stuff. And going forward in the show, we'll be bringing in some of the frameworks that they teach, Michael Balchan and the founder, Brian Johnson, because it is about managing the financial part of it, but it's also about the non-financial part of it. And a lot of that is about how do I focus on being my best self today? So that's sort of some backdrop to this. And so Michael's going to come in today. Michael and I and you are going to talk about, let's define what we mean by hero, and then we'll continue to build this framework throughout the month. All right, Michael. Well, I'm excited to have you here today, Michael, because we're talking about heroic retirement, which fits very well with rocking retirement, which is how to have the confidence to have a great life, regardless of what's going on in the world. And I've been doing a lot of this heroic coaching and seeing you on my screen and you and Brian. And I wanted to have you on for this series on how do you actually live a heroic retirement? And we should probably start with what actually is heroic. What is a hero? What is a heroic retirement in the first place?
Well, Roger, first off, thank you. It's truly an honor to be here, and I'm fired up to connect with you. And I know we're going to do a series of these, so I'm excited to connect with their community and share anything that I can to help them live more heroically in their retirement. I think we should, maybe even before getting to the heroic, start with the disclaimer that I am the ripe old age of 36. I just turned 36. My birthday was like 2 weeks ago. So I am not yet approaching that retirement threshold. So I'm speaking to the retirement side of things, not from experience, but from the philosophical approach of how I'm thinking about it, and then how these concepts that we've taught and baked into the platform could apply to that. That having been said, we do have a ton of folks who are in that demographic that we've spoken to, that we've had conversations with, that we supported in doing this. So although there's not a personal experience for me approaching retirement yet, there's a lived experience of working with individuals, both as part of heroic and otherwise, to apply these concepts to that domain of life. And then I will say, at the ripe old age of 22 or 23, as I was entering my first career as a commodity options trader. So I went out of school into commodity options trading in finance. I had the potentially naive idea, like, I'm going to make so much money in 5 years and then retire and figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life. That did not happen. It took a few longer years to make that transition from what was almost like the first episode of my professional career in finance into the second episode of my professional career. We might speak to David Brooks's The Second Mountain, the idea of multiple stages of life, first half, second half, and we'll tie that into heroic. So stepping back, heroic. Our company is the Heroic Public Benefit Corporation. We got that word heroic from an ancient Greek word, hero. If you ask most people to define what is a hero, they will often say killer of bad guys or tough guy or super strong or whatever it is. But that's actually not what the word means. The word hero comes from that Greek word. It's got two little lines over the E and over the O, and it means protector. So the ancient Greek word hero means protector. We like to say that a hero has strength for two. A hero's secret weapon is love. They are a protector of the values that they hold most dearly and the people in the communities they hold most dearly. And they are willing to do that hard work to be a protector of those values, of those that they care about most importantly. And sure, that might mean battling dragons or battling the bad guys or being willing to say that thing that's a little bit uncomfortable, even being a hero in their own life of looking, where are the places in my life where I'm falling short of where I could be living up to? And how can I protect that version of myself that I'm most inspired to bring into this world by taking courageous action towards what I believe to be most important. So a hero is a protector. A hero has strength for two. They're willing to do the hard work to have that strength for two. Their secret weapon is love. Everything they do comes from and is done in the service of love. And when we tie it into something like a heroic retirement, it's really interesting in the way that it maps over a lot of the research around this first mountain, second mountain concept that I referenced. And there's a bunch of different labels that often get put on that general distinction, but the categories might be quite clear. And this first mountain is kind of an ego-driven fame, wealth, power, popularity. Someone might say some of the extrinsic goals that we're after. And these things aren't unimportant, right? All things considered, having more wealth allows you to do more than having less wealth. Having more power allows you to do more than having less power, having more connected relationships, etc. So it's not that these things are bad, but they often lack this deep sense of inner fulfillment, this deep sense of what in ancient Greek they would call eudaimonia, or modern positive psychologists would say flourishing. That we can win that game, those first mountain, that first chapter game of we can be super wealthy and we can be super powerful and we can have all those things and still feel like we're missing something. Feel like I'm just not quite feeling the level of happiness that I thought I might have by achieving these external successes. And then the second mountain is often service driven. So if the first frame is what can I get out of life, the second frame is often what can I give? How can I support? How can I add value to those around me? It may or may not be related to whatever the quest that we were on in this first half. We might take those lessons that we've learned, those skills that we've gained, those resources that we've gained, and figure out how do I apply them in service of other people, in service of something bigger than myself. Again, this first phase, second phase, if you are successful in your first phase, that will give you a lot of tools to be successful in the second phase and to give back. But if we're expecting to have this deep level of happiness and enthusiasm and excitement by winning these extrinsic games versus how can I serve? How can I help other people experience a higher quality of life? How can I connect with those around me? That's this second mountain, second phase, and heroic, right? A hero is someone who's willing to do that work, to be able to serve those around them. And that's how I think a lot of these concepts can map over into having a heroic retirement. And I know you've got a ton you want to go back and forth on, so I'll pause, knowing I have a tendency to go off. And please interrupt me at any point too, because I think this will be really dynamic and fun.
Yeah, when I think of that first mountain, and that is a great book, The Second Mountain, that frames it that way. And when way back when I was 36, I'm 55, so not that far. That first mountain has its own rules and benchmarks. And for my generation anyway, we came out of college in that matrix that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, this professional development, right? And so not only are we chasing the material things, one, just to be able to have a solid foundation for a family, but also to actually reward ourselves for all that hard work to get to whatever we're doing. But we're also starting to get, I call it institutionalized into somebody else's rules, corporate rules. If you work for a corporation, the reward system that's built up in terms of incentives and money and trips and titles. And we think that's the game. And then when you wake up, I know I did, and wait a second, that's not as fulfilling. That's the first mountain. It's like, wait a second, this isn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be. But I'm so used to that framework that it's hard to imagine another one. So how do you think about making that transition to get uninstitutionalized?
There's a couple different ways thinking about that transition. And just to speak to one of the easiest ways to be forced into that transition is to win this first mountain game, right? And I was blessed with a certain level of success on those typical first mountain game things. My whole frame growing up was like, get into a good school. Like that's the point of life for me as a young kid, like study hard so you can get into a good school. College was like perfect. Got into a great school, graduated from that great school, got a job that had like, the finance. I was a commodity options trader for almost a decade. So like sexy title and a lot of money and cool hours and awesome. Great relationship. I was very blessed to meet my now wife when I was still in college. So we met in a study abroad program. Can kind of check that box early, which was phenomenal for me, but had this great relationship, owned our home, didn't have debt, was in great shape, had done all these things. I'd like checked those boxes of what I thought would give me joy, and then was like angry that I didn't have the joy, right? So I was like, I did the things that these people told me that if I did them, I would experience happiness. And that's almost this forced out of that first mountain frame, out of that money incentive frame, right? This is not me, but if I'm putting myself in another lens, it's like, I won the salesperson's trip, right? I've gone on all the vacations. I've got the title. I'm at the top of the company. And I still don't have that thing that I thought getting those things would give me. And then that forces me to reassess. Okay, it may or may not. For me, it was a forcing function of what are those things that would actually give me that sense of joy and satisfaction that I thought would come from this frame that actually didn't. But this is not something that's limited just to that transition needing to happen. This is something I think we are constantly told. It's not just the rules of a professional institution that's offering incentives or titles or whatever it is, but it's almost our entire society is sold this game that's extrinsic, that's hedonic, that's pleasure driven or wealth driven or fame driven or popularity driven or whatever it is. And we actually teach this as the very first module that we do in basic training in the apps. The very first thing we do in our coach program. It's what we think is the essence of wisdom, is actually knowing the game that you're playing, recognizing the game that you're playing, and being willing to look at the game that you might have fallen into as a result of society or parents or businesses. And to be really clear, I don't think it's an intentional, willful, we want to confuse people, right? All of our parents, and I'm a parent now, like all of our parents did their best, and I'm trying to do my best, and society is doing what it knows to do. It's not this big brother, willful, intentional wrongness that's getting spread out there. But it's just a default path that most of us have fallen into as a result of all the things going on around. And then we just wake up. And that's the first step, is like, wake up, recognize we get to decide the rules, the boundary conditions, the game that we are playing in our own lives. And in order to do that, we want to leverage our own personal experience as well as the collective wisdom of everybody who has also gone through this challenge, because it is at least 2,500-year-old challenge. We talk about integrating ancient wisdom and modern science. You look across any of the ancient spiritual traditions, many of which are still around, right? Whether that's from the Stoic frame or some of these ancient Greek and Roman frames, to Christianity or Buddhism or Islam or Taoism or Confucianism or Judaism, or cross the spiritual traditions into the modern positive psychology, where we're trying to take a little bit more of a empirical approach to, let's look at this. What actually makes somebody feel happy? What actually helps somebody experience that sense of joy, or as they would say, flourish? Martin Seligman, founder of positive psychology, wrote a book. It's called Flourish. That is the goal according to positive psychology. Okay, and they find the same thing. There you go. They find the same thing. A deeply meaningful life comes down to expressing the best versions of ourselves more and more consistently.
Would you say being a hero is intentionally working to express the best version of yourself? That's the quest. That's the journey.
I would go one step beyond that. So it's not only intentionally working to express the best version of yourself, but it's ultimately to do that in service of something greater than yourself. So some people might be familiar with Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's like this pyramid. At the base lead, you've got things like eating and sleeping, these basic physiological fundamental needs. And you've got emotional needs, and you've got wealth, the need for safety. And at the peak of his pyramid, in the first iteration, was self-actualization, which basically means expressing that best version. You take the qualities that are inherent within you, and you're bringing them forth. You're expressing the best version of yourself. But he went back. So the first book's published, the hierarchy of needs is public, self-actualization, that's the goal. He went back and he said, I actually missed what might be the most important thing, and that's self-transcendence. So going beyond expressing the best version of yourself to do it in service of something bigger than yourself. And that something bigger could just be collective humanity, people. It could be your family. It could be a higher power, but it's doing the best that you can to try and make a positive impact on others. So that heroic lens. Yeah.
The first thing that comes to mind, Michael, is especially as you're transitioning to retirement and giving up all of these obligations that you have, is, dude, I just want to rest. I don't want an epic quest to save the world. When I think of service of something bigger than yourself, what immediately comes to mind is something larger than life. And maybe this is from movies or whatever. And answer me if this is correct. It literally could, that bigger than yourself could be being the most amazing grandmother that you can be. Is that adequate, or is that not big enough?
That is perfect. So the beauty is we get to choose what's that sphere of influence beyond ourselves that we want to dedicate ourselves to. And it doesn't mean that we are exclusively giving so much away that we're not taking care of ourselves, right? It's not just self-transcendence. You can't go right to like, oh, give everything to others. You got to have that self-actualization first. You've got to start with that, express the best, and then do it in service of someone bigger, something bigger than yourself. But it can be just a partner, right? It doesn't even have to be like a grand. It could be one person. It could be that grand. It could be the best grandmother or grandfather, or to be the best neighbor, or to be the best board member, to be the best mentor, right? If you run successful business, you want to mentor younger business professionals growing up. It could be something. It doesn't matter the size or scope of it. What matters is you feel like you're making a meaningful contribution. And there's an inherent sense of, I really feel proud about what I'm doing here and the way that I'm showing up here. and not judging ourselves based on what other people are doing and how other people are contributing, or some perceived sense of, well, if I want to raise money for charity and I raise $1 million, but really 10 million was the goal that I was setting for myself, and I feel like I'm falling short of that, that's going to create a sense of lack and a sense of disease, rather than like, oh my goodness, able to create a certain amount of impact for somebody else. So being willing to shrink that down, and it's a great question. It's a common thing that most people tend to, I think, get wrong when they're first going about this, is like, I got to do so much stuff, or like, I've spent my entire life trying to do a lot of stuff for other people, and now I just want to like slow down.
I just want to be in my wood shop. I just wanted to travel. Let me ask you this. Being a hero is, initially, you got to understand what the ultimate game is. And the game is your game, nobody else's game. I always say in my life and in my business, I really play by my own rules. I do my best to do that. And it served me well, structuring my life when I follow it. But how does one actually come up with what their purpose is? Because that even sounds like a huge hurdle. I mean, I got to go to a mountain and zen out meditate for a month. What do I have to do to actually find it?
Yeah, I love that. So I want to make sure that we're properly closing loops and threads, and I'll speak to purpose too, but the importance of having a purpose. And Japanese has a beautiful word for this, ikigai, this reason for getting up in the morning. And research, the science is pretty clear that when we're lacking that sense of purpose, almost like our life force, our essence drains. So the last thing that you want to do is have no meaning in your life, have no purpose in your life, just because you're not then having the energy, the vitality to bring to. That doesn't mean this purpose has to be this crazy big thing, go to a mountain, zen out, etc. That purpose could be, I want to figure out, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? What do I want to do over the next years? And the most important thing for me to do over the next week or 2 weeks or month or 2 months, or how much time it is to be really intentional about slowing down and thinking about, what is it that I want to dedicate my next X amount of time to? And that small project, Sonia Lyubomirsky has this great line, happy people have projects. One of the leading positive psychologists out of the UC Riverside system, but How of Happiness is a book you can check out.
Yeah, we've had her on about 3-4 years ago, actually.
Oh, amazing. So happy people have projects. So your project can be, I want to figure out what it is that feels like a deeply meaningful purpose. That being said, William Damon, he's got a lot of stuff that's similar to David Brooks, but William Damon is one of the world's leading experts in the science of purpose. And we had him in our coach program, and I asked him, like, how do you find your purpose? This is a great question. I would love to know. I'm sure most people would love to know. And a big shift that he made for me that I think is really important is, most of us, I say most of us often as a proxy for like me and a lot of people that I've spoken to, it is easy to think that purpose is something that is forward looking. And I think that there's reasons for that. We are teleological beings. That means we have targets, we have goals. We are best when we have something that we're looking forward in the future and wanting to create. But this sense of purpose is actually best created in many cases retroactively. So by looking at things that we've already done and seeing what was purposeful in those, or what was meaningful in those, or what did I enjoy doing? What did I not enjoy doing? And interesting, the only way that we can be able to look backwards at a set of experiences is to just get started with something, is to start that next project, which adds data into our archaeological collection of, oh, did that feel great? Did that feel meaningful or not? When I had this job that I was willing to go into for a year, 2 years, whatever it was, it gave me these things. It felt like this was lacking. That's great data for me to find what is my purpose here. So we don't need to go to that month-long meditation retreat in the mountains with complete silence and sit and think, what is my purpose? What am I meant to do? What am I meant to do? We often discover the purpose by getting into action on, this might be it. This might be something that moves me closer in the direction of what that project, that purpose might be. And the willingness to get in action there. And also, oh, that wasn't it. But I learned, I got experience from it. I got data from it. And now I can.
You know what that makes me think of? You have a daughter, right?
I have 2 daughters. Yeah.
2 daughters. Okay. And how old are they?
Just turned 4 and a year and a half.
So this would be more the 4-year-old and going forward. That experimental, what do I like? What don't I like? Makes me think of a child. Like my daughter, who's 24 now, I liked karate, and now I like gymnastics, and now I like this. And they would try things on and to discover what they really enjoyed. And I think that's a perfect framing for someone leaving full-time work. We use the word retirement, but I don't really believe in the word retirement. They're leaving full-time work, and now they have all this time freedom to actually go explore maybe for the first time because of all the demands of busy life, successful life. So it's a perfect time to have this blank slate, just like your daughter, right? I love that.
And full of things that you have gained, right? From that full-time employment, from the odds and ends prior to that full-time employment. And there's not
a lot more data to pull from than a 4-year-old.
Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that the 4-year-old or the child does really naturally that I think a lot of folks with more experience, including myself, tend to not do as naturally, the child has no judgment. It's not, is this the thing that I'm supposed to be doing? Or is like, am I the best in the world at this thing? Or like, is it, the child is just,
or simply, I can't do that. No, I could never poke it. I could never poke it.
No, there's no additional layers on it. So it's this kind of pure joy data that's coming in that then gets shaped into like this. And the child also, to be fair, needs some direction, needs some guidance, and needs sometimes like they don't know where the rails are. And guess what? Don't jump off that because you're going to fall and hurt yourself. And part of the parent is like letting them make that mistake, right? Letting them experience that. We can use that data later on in our lives to find that next thing that's exciting to us, that next thing we want to dedicate ourselves to. And you spoke to making our own game, playing by our own rules. We all need to do that. And this ancient wisdom and modern science, what they say, that's important because like that's collective experience that we can draw from. But at the end of the day, we all have our own experiences. Our heads are going to hit the pillow. No one else is involved in that conversation in our minds except for ourselves. No one else is ultimately going to be looking at what we are doing and judging ourselves except for ourselves, right? Am I proud of how I'm showing up? Did I do my best to do my best today, knowing I'll never get it perfectly? And then just being really clear on what are the rules I want to play by? What's the grid that I want to like plug my life into and measure myself against? Like, am I doing my best?
And so we've been very conceptual here for this first episode on purpose. But if you've listened to the show long enough, all I really care about is how to make decisions and actually doing things. And so throughout the month, we're going to bring it down to how do I actually do this? How do I manage this project, which that is my life? And so next week, what we're going to do is talk about some of the core virtues that embody a heroic life that we want to have as guideposts or cards to build that intentionality. And then we'll go deeper into the big three, which is part of the heroic structure that Michael and Brian have developed. And then at the end of this series, we're going to go down into today's the day. What do I do today to take that little baby step? So come join us next week. And Michael, I'm excited to chat with you next week.
I am too, but I want to, knowing that there's so much of an action focus and an action lens, I want to drop a final nugget for how to take even the philosophical big frames that we've talked about and make it actionable. And that's two things. We've talked a lot about purpose and having this big picture purpose and finding our purpose, et cetera. There's an alternate approach to this, which is find the ways in which you are already making an impact in the things that you are already doing. So often this serve something bigger than me is like, oh, I got to find that thing instead of, you know what, when I make the coffee for my wife in the morning, that is an act of service. That is me adding meaning to somebody else's life. When I hold that door open for somebody, when I give my granddaughter or grandson a hug, or when I mentor that person or whatever it is, we can make those connections. We want to make those connections between what we're already doing and the impact that is having elsewhere. So start to look for those connections. And then the other action of being, start to look for other opportunities to make tiny positive contributions to the lives of others. That could be holding the door. That could be carrying the groceries. That could be asking for help, like giving somebody else the opportunity to you. That's often a gift as well. But looking for tiny ways to live more heroically, to live more in service of others, to see how can I make a positive contribution to those around me, to the environment that's around me, all of those things. And we don't have to wait for next week's going to be great. The weeks after that's going to be great. It's all going to be great. But the whole game is, can I figure out how to do this a little bit more today, a little bit more this moment, this next moment, this next moment, this next moment.
Well, you made my job easier because every episode we have a SMART sprint of a little action they can take in the next 7 days. And so that's the first SMART sprint, is to start to be aware of what you do in service that could be maybe a little seedling of your purpose, and pay attention to those things. Be intentional. Awesome. All right, Michael, we'll chat next week.
See you soon.
So we're going to get to some of your questions because we always want to answer what's on your mind. So we'll be doing that throughout the month. And then September, we're going to have another question-focused theme for the month. So if you have a question for the show, you can go to rogerwhitney.com/Ask Roger. And if you leave an audio question, that's like the fast pass at Disney World to get you a little bit ahead of the line because we love audio questions. Our first question is from Lee, who asked a very simple question. How long does it typically take to recover from a bear market? Well, that's a good question since we are in a bear market in equities. So let's start from the beginning. Let's define what a bear market is in any broad index. It is defined as a drop of 20% or more over at least a 2-month period. So if the markets have come down 20% or more, we call that a bear market. Now that's just a artificial measure that has been used throughout the decades. There's nothing special about the 20% drop from the high, but that's what we define as a bear market. So if you have a dollar in, say, the S&P 500 index or something that mimics it, and it goes down to 80 cents, well, that's a bear market, right? Lost 20%. Some bear markets last very short periods of time, weeks or months. Some are more secular bear markets that can last months or years. And we can go back to history and look at some of those things. So during the last 65-year period, there have been 11 bear markets in U.S. equities, looking at the S&P 500 index. Our most recent has been the spring of 2020, right? That March COVID bear market, which lasted a month or two, right? It was a really quick one, quickest one in history. 8 of the 11 bear markets generally have coincided with a recession in the market, which is a slowdown of the U.S. economy, the economic cycle of recession and recovery and so forth. How bad were most bear markets? Well, the average drop has been about 30%, but they've ranged from a 19 or basically 20% drop all the way to a 56% drop as a worst from that's the peak of the market to the bottom of the bear market. So you can see a wide range of 20% to a 56% drop from peak to trough. Now, if we think of recent bear markets, the 2007, October 2007 to March of 2009 was the last, major bear market. That was the meltdown, right? The Great Recession. And we saw an aggressive portfolio, basically 100% stocks, go from the high point, which was October 17th of 2007, to the bottom, March 9th of 2009, which was my son's birthday. It went from a peak to the bottom, lost about 51% of its value. So that's an example of a pretty severe one, and I think we all probably remember that. Now, the average bear market lasts about 11 months, and over time, the average recovery is about 19 months. So that will give you an idea of the average, but there's a lot of variation around that. The recovery has ranged from 4 months to almost 6 years, depending on the episode. And bear markets are just part of a cycle with equities or with bonds or with real estate, just like they are part of, recessions are part of a cycle with economies. Everyone's a little bit different. If we look back at the recession and the bear market in 2008, in that time frame, that had a lot of demand-driven recession, right? Demand went away for everything, real estate, all sorts of investments. So the demand went away with the supply being there, and the supply had to adjust to that or had to work through its issues. Right now, the current bear market is a little bit different in the sense that the demand is there for most things. It's really a supply constrained recession in many things because of supply disruptions for all sorts of reasons, which means that we're getting more inflation with this because there's not enough supply to meet the demand, which causes inflation, the cost of things to go up. Whereas in 2008, we had the opposite effect. So every one of these is a little bit different. On average, to your question, about 19 months it takes to recover. But it can be a really painful period of time, right? Like if we go to the 18 months or so of the Great Recession in 2008, that was a rough period. And the thing with recessions or with bear markets is when you are in them, you really are clouded to see in terms of our perspective of will they ever end? All we can see is that the pain, and that everything that we're hearing and feeling is that it's just going to get worse. And that's where it's easy to make unforced errors. No different than when things are really, really going well, whether it's markets or in your life, it's easy to project into the future that it's going to continue that way. And we maybe get a little bit too optimistic and have some unforced errors in that direction as well. So the biggest battle, whether it's good markets or bad markets, are always internal battles of managing how we make decisions and how we avoid unforced errors when we're pessimistic, just like avoiding unforced errors when we're optimistic. And that's one reason why having a hero structure and a decision-making framework is so critical. So hopefully that gives you some perspective there, Lee. So our next question comes from Bill regarding the tricky spousal filing rule for Social Security.
Hi, Roger. This is Bill. Longtime listener, first-time caller. I really appreciate all of the helpful information that the podcast has offered over the years. Thank you. I have a question about Social Security. My wife worked before we had kids, and then when we had children, she became a stay-at-home mom and did not work thereafter. We're both 62 now. I had always thought we would both delay taking Social Security for as long as possible in order to maximize the monthly benefit. My wife's individual monthly benefit is less than half of my individual monthly benefit now, and according to Social Security's projections, will remain less than half of my individual monthly benefit for each year up to age 70. My question is this. Since my wife will receive a monthly benefit equal to half of my monthly benefits when I start taking Social Security, which is still projected to be in 8 years when I turn 70, should she just take her monthly benefit now? If she does so, will she still receive a monthly benefit equal to half of my monthly benefit when I eventually start taking Social Security? All the best to everyone in your shop and in the RRC. Take care.
Well, that's a tricky question, Bill, so I definitely would continue to do more research, but here's my understanding of it. For anyone born after January 1st, 1954, and it sounds like you can no longer take one benefit now and the other benefit later. And in this case, if you're both 62, that includes your family. Instead, if your wife tried to apply for her own benefit now, she would be what's called deemed filing for all the benefits that she was eligible for and would be given the larger benefit she was eligible for now. It would not be able to pursue another benefit later on. Congress closed a lot of loopholes here. Since you aren't planning on taking Social Security at this time, she may not be able to take her spousal benefit and would lock in her Social Security benefit at the one based on her pre-children work earnings. Plus, it's going to be reduced early because she'd be claiming before her full retirement age. And your wife can't file for her spousal Social Security benefit until you file for yours, but her benefit isn't going to continue to grow other than by the inflation-adjusted earnings. So I'd be very careful, Bill, about her filing now before full retirement age because it's going to lock in a lower amount and perhaps handicap the amount that she's going to receive ultimately when you file. So this can be pretty complicated. So I would just be careful about that because they close a lot of these loopholes. So our next question is an audio question from Steven related to his mom's situation.
Hi, Roger. My name is Steven. I'm calling on behalf of my mother, who's a 65-year-old recent widow. She has Social Security and pension of $2,000 per month and is moving in with her son, myself, in Florida. She has minimal expenses and lives well below that income and will have zero debt once the house is sold. The expected proceeds from the house are $100,000 to $150,000. She currently has $25,000 in life insurance that was received from a death benefit, along with other total savings of $10,000 in cash. A key point is the history of dementia and Alzheimer's with the expected assisted living in the next 2 to 3 years based on the same trajectory of her mother. Based on that knowledge, what should our investment allocation look like? Should we be looking into stocks, bonds, cash, etc.? What do you recommend, Roger? And thank you for answering my question.
Hey, Steven, first thing I want to say is bravo for you, buddy. You're stepping up. You're being a good son. Your mom's moving in. You're going to help her on this journey. What a blessing to her. That's awesome. All right. So you have $2,000 a month in income, or she does, and about $150,000 to $185,000 in assets. And what do you do with the money? And also you are looking at, she may be progressing on this path with dementia. So you have that issue to deal with. So from an investment profile, let's look at the numbers. Nationally, a memory care facility costs about $5,600 a month. Take away her income, the assets will last roughly 3 to 4 years before they're exhausted if she had to go into a memory care facility. And so we have a pretty short investment time frame that we're looking at. Now, it is true that she won't go directly into the memory care unit necessarily. You'll provide some care. Perhaps you have home care for a period of time, and those can cost $0 for you or less if it's home care. So we have a very short investment time frame. So when we look at the investment options from a risk return perspective, if we buy, say, stocks, like you mentioned, or other assets that can move up and down significantly, yes, they may earn a superior return, but we're not guaranteed that superior return. And that could help the situation, but they also could lose a lot of money. Even if long-term they're good assets, they could go through, well, another bear market or some other hiccup. And that would impair your mother's situation even more. So I think of that as an asymmetrical equation. The benefit of the upside isn't guaranteed, but if you lose money, it could impair and hurt the situation even more. So I would lean towards more cash equivalent type of investments for your mom with the fact set that you've given me. And that's going to mean CDs, treasury bills, money markets, things like that. And probably one of the more attractive ones right now are going to be treasury bills, where because of the interest rate changes we've seen over the last 6-7 months, a 3, 6, 9, 12-month T-bill, which is the most liquid market in the world, I believe, they're yielding right around 3%. So at least it's better than a money market or a CD, given the short-term time frame. And then that money can come due, and then you can either reinvest it in T-bills and perhaps get higher rates if your mom's doing well, or it'll come liquid when you need it. So that, from an investment standpoint, I wouldn't get fancy here. Let's make the main thing the main thing. A couple other things to consider on the investment end of it. Well, this isn't really the financial end of it. One is, I would do some research on what the cost of services are in your zip code for memory care, home care, as well as residential care. Because that national average of $5,600 a month, there's a wide spectrum of cost depending on where you live. And so I would learn what that cost is where you live, because it may be a lot less or it could be more. That would be step one. Step two would be, I would start to contact resources in your area to do some vetting as to the breadth of their services, their reviews, their competency. I would do that for home health care for sure. And I also would do that for memory care facilities. And they have a lot of great people that can have walked this journey before or seen people that have walked this journey. So they may be able to connect you to other resources to prepare you depending on the progression of this with your mom, okay? Now, on the non-financial side, I think it's really important for your mom to have her estate documents in place and also the powers of attorney in place so you or whoever she chooses can act on her behalf in the event that she's not able to. It's really critical to have those things in place so this can run smoothly. Those are the types of things I think I'd focus on being on this journey, and I wish you and your mom all the best on it, okay? And with that, let's go set a SMART sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step you can take in the next 7 days to not just rock retirement, but rock life. So in the next 7 days, I want you to heed Michael's advice. Pay attention to the things that you are currently doing where you feel like you're in your zone, where you see yourself having an impact on your spouse, on your children, on your neighbor, in your community. What is it that you're doing where you are serving others, but also serving yourself and feeling fulfilled? Because those are threads that you can pull to start to identify your heroic self, right? And then also start to pay attention to opportunities that maybe we miss throughout our day that we can start taking advantage of to lean into this heroic self. That sounds like fun, doesn't it? Holding on for a hero, Bonnie Raitt says in her song. It's great. So you got to watch the YouTube video at high volume. It just is so 80s and so rocking with that electro beat. It just makes me laugh. Anyway, holding out for a hero Come on. You're the hero. You have always been there. You are stronger than you think. And with the proper frameworks, whether it's managing finances or leaning into what you're doing with your life, just little basic things, nothing big, you can become more of the hero for yourself but also for others. I'm excited about that. I know I'm excited about it for myself, and I'm excited to have you with me on this journey. So next week, we're going to talk about virtues that a hero encompasses with Michael. But for now, go make it a great day. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance reference is historical and does not guarantee future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. Make sure you consult your legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions.